Left of the box. So on my channel, not too long ago, I posted a couple clips of me and Mike from the Humanist Report when he was on my show to chat. And we ended up talking about TYT. Both of us have connections with TYT that are no longer connections with TYT. Plus there was a clip that they had just released at that time that kind of got under our skin. So both of us wanted to comment on it. And, you know, those clips on my channel actually gave my channel a nice little boost. Got a lot of new subscribers. The one clip that I posted of Mike from the Humanist Report is now like the #1 watched clip on my channel and stuff. And so, like, part of me is like, it's tempting. It's tempting to just completely grift out and make gossipy TYT stuff all the time. But the thing is again, I have principles and integrity. And I found it very hilarious, even in the comments of those couple clips that I posted from that one conversation, somebody accusing me of just being a gossip channel about TYT and using it to promote myself, which is so far from the truth. Because the thing is that you learn a lot about a person, a content creator, by the choices they make on what to present, the editorial choices. And if you look at my channel on a whole, what are you going to see? You're going to see the vast majority of my stuff is about healthcare, because that is one of my primary concerns. I cover a lot of LGBTQ plus issues. It's predominantly Canadian politics. I do dabble in American stuff, especially when it comes to social issues, because that has cross-border appeal. But without a doubt, you can look at my channel and you can see where my principles lie. But every now and then, I feel it's important to call out TYT, especially when they blow up on social media, when they're doing things that is basically harmful. Like, not just to the left or messaging, but can have like real world harmful implications to people. And this is especially egregious when it comes to trans people and their takes on trans people and non-binary people and the language that they use around that and some of the right-wing talking points that they go on. And again, part of it is the stories they choose to present. Says a lot about who they are and where their principles lie. Now, the vast majority of stuff, I would imagine, still is kind of on the left when it comes to TYT. They are the home of progressives, after all. But truth be told, I don't watch them anymore, so I don't know where the bulk of their stuff is. But I have seen some trends that are troubling. Because even if you look at something like, oh, but they're very strong on Gaza. You know, Cenk and Anna are both very passionate at calling out the genocide on Gaza. But again, it's not just their personal opinion. It's also what they choose to present on their channel, what they represent, shows where their principles lie. And so you can personally say that you are against the genocide with all your throat, and Cenk does. And sometimes it's cathartic to hear him rail against a Zionist or something when he's in a debate. But at the same time, he has Ben Glebe on, who is a raging Zionist, absolutely horrible individual. But Cenk will have Ben Glebe on the main show to have these debates about what's happening in Gaza, because Cenk wants to be balanced and show both sides of a situation. There aren't two sides to a genocide. And having Ben on to argue the side of Israel and their genocide only serves to legitimize Ben's views that it is a both sides issue when it's not. And the thing is that Cenk will have Ben on to talk about Israel and Gaza. But when was the last time Cenk had somebody on who is trans, who is non-binary, to talk about, you know, our perspectives on stories and stuff, to have a debate with us about why we should exist, why we should have the right to exist? Where are those people coming onto the show to debate that? How often do you see him give a platform to a climate change denier? And then some people might say, but, it's okay to do it on the main show because at least he's pushing back, and Cenk does push back against Ben with his right-wing talking points. But again, the sheer fact that he's giving Ben Glebe that platform says a lot about who he is when it comes to the corporation of TYT. And sure, he might push back on the live show when it's him and Ben talking and having a debate. But that's not the only time Ben contributes to TYT. Ben also posted a Rebel HQ video that was about 15 minutes long. That was the most Zionist piece of shit I had ever seen on TYT. Ben was just saying all the horrendous things that you can imagine when, spewing the debunked things that happened on October 7th, Ben's point of view when it comes to what Hamas is, what Palestinians are, all of that. And that went unchallenged. And it's part of their network. Because, again, Cenk is more than happy to share his platform with somebody like Ben. But when it comes to queer issues, it's odd how queer folks just seem to have trickled away from the network. But there's no, hey, why don't you guys come back? Why don't we have a heart-to-heart? Why don't we actually talk about this? We're all on the left. We're all in this together. We should be able to sit down as adults and talk about this issue. But somehow that never seems to happen. Somehow we never get invited back onto the show to talk about this. But when issues do come up, and their takes on crime recently have been quite horrendous, whenever people on the left push back in the slightest or try to correct them, suddenly they blow up. Like, we have to agree on 100%. Like, even if we have a 2% disagreement, then suddenly we're Nazis and things of that sort. We can't have any disagreements on the left and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, we have plenty of disagreements on the left. But we should be able to talk about it. You should be able to have people to come on in good faith to talk about things as inflammatory as what you're talking about and have good faith conversations about it the same way you give it to a genocidal Zionist. And it has to be more than just, inviting Olemi on to talk about crime statistics and stuff and then totally condescend to her the entire time. It's about having good faith conversations, good faith interactions. And it's the people who are trying to help TYT get back to where we thought they were that they tend to lash out at the most. And so recently, they chose to amplify a story. And again, a lot of it has to do in the stories they choose to present. And we've seen this when it comes to trans issues before, when it comes to certain types of crime before, how they'll take one outlier of a protest with trans people where, the right-wing presenters felt threatened enough to go into a room. Oh, they're too radical on the left. These trans activists are so radical. They'll promote like those stories, but say barely anything about the hundreds and hundreds of bills being passed through American legislation that is literally stripping away people's right to exist. They'll choose an outlier of one, those independent schools. I forget what they're called in the States. charter school, that's it. You know, this one charter school that had this weird, you know, anti or a DEI type curriculum for elementary kids or something of that sort, or like this completely outlier case, and use it and prop it up trying to say and paint all leftists as being this extreme and radical and stuff. And Cenk has this annoying habit of, you know, trying to make us a monolith, and we're not. You know, no group is a monolith. And it gets frustrating because of how vitriotic they get towards other leftists. Yet when it comes to right-wingers, they seem to be so much more willing to cede ground to, you know, let's sit down and have a good faith conversation. That's fine. But when it's people on the left, it's just instant yelling. It's instant dismissing. It's instant, oh, the left can't be convinced of anything reasonable because they're off here and they want this and that and the other thing. And this is why I'm bringing up this story. It's not so much the story in itself, but it's how they're reacting to it. And the story itself is pretty bad to begin with. So what the story is apparently, it was reported down in the States that a Venezuelan gang has taken over an apartment complex and is threatening the residents and all this sort of stuff. And the problem is that there's no proof of this. And it looks like the landlords had let the building fall apart to the point where it's actually dangerous for the tenants, and the landlords are refusing to make any improvements, and the tenants have said for years that they are in danger, but not from gangs, but from the deteriorating state of the buildings and things of that sort. And there's all this misinformation going around. And the thing is that they're focusing on, you know, the reports from the landlords, from the police, from local media that also has the same biases as TYT does when it comes to getting clicks. You know, again, a lot of your principles shows in what you choose to present. I could present TYT stuff every live stream, and it would help my numbers. It would. It's kind of frustrating to me when I see how well, like if you look at my top 5 videos, 4 of them are about TYT. And I do kind of find that frustrating. But there's no way I'm going to devote my channel to that. No, I'm still going to make the videos about Doug Ford and healthcare. You know, healthcare in Alberta, Saskatchewan, you know, what's happening about the Science Center and all this sort of stuff. Videos where I'm like trying my best to push them over 100 views. Because that's what's important to me. And it's not only that, I feel like the stories I cover are significant to others because it has real world impact. You know, the policies of the government has real world impact. The amount of social murder the Doug Ford government is responsible for is disgusting. And as somebody who lives in a vulnerable group, I live with disabilities, I live with poverty, I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community, I don't see enough representation of me and people like me online. So I feel it's important to get my voice out. And I do this knowing I have to fight for every view I get. I have to work for it. You know, I want nothing more than for my channel to have over 10,000 subscribers by the time the next provincial or federal election comes around in Canada and in Ontario. And I have to work for it. Yet I could easily just become a grifter and focus on talking smack about TYT and my channel would take off. So when I see TYT choosing these sensationalized stories for the sake of clicks, it's really disappointing and says a lot about them. And so they did exactly what some local media did, and they cherry-picked, you know, people to talk to when it came to this specific story to make it in the most, you know, outrageous, salacious story possible, without actually looking at all the facts on the ground, without accounting for anything. But then as soon as they would hear anything that kind of pushes against the narrative that they want, the narrative that would get them their clicks, the narrative that would back up their opinions and their talking points, as soon as they get any pushback, they launch attacks on those people and say, well, you just love crime then. Really, people on the left, notorious crime lovers. And so there's a series of tweets that kind of paint a good picture of all of this that I wanted to touch on. And then there's another clip that I wanted to touch on where, again, it's just showing this really weird right-wing takes, especially coming from Anna, that are just becoming more and more predominant on the main show. And like I said, she's not of the left, she's not of the right. She is a pendulum, and she swings, and she'll have left-wing takes and she'll have right-wing takes, and it'll go back and forth. But over time, the center of that pendulum has been shifting more and more to the right. And so the left-wing takes are becoming fewer and far in between, and the right-wing takes are becoming more extreme. And so we'll get to that as well. So first, let's start with some of these tweets. So from Cenk, local news in Colorado has absolutely confirmed Venezuelan gangs took over apartment buildings in Aurora, including a report by legal team hired by the property owners. So why are the local authorities ceding U.S. territory to foreign gangs? Why haven't the cops gone in already? The cops, famously known for not cracking down on immigrants. Like, this tweet in and of itself, the focus on the fact that they're saying Venezuelan gangs, you know, that are doing this, targeting a group of immigrants, sensationalizing that Venezuelan gangs is already problematic. Could it just been gangs? And then, you know, absolute unconditional proof, including a report by the legal team hired by the property owners. The same property owners that people who live in the buildings say have let the buildings deteriorate so much that they're basically condemned. But the property owners want to distract by that. So suddenly there's gangs of people coming in and robbing the apartment, taking it over. It's now like a little Venezuelan town in this apartment building, and the police are just not doing anything about it. Of course not. The police, with all their military equipment and resources, are doing nothing to stop this gang from terrorizing a local community. Because it's not like they don't have the firepower capable of doing it. It's not like they don't have a whole bunch of trigger-happy people that would love the opportunity to go in guns blazing to shoot a whole bunch of brown people. No, that's not the police in the United States. Not at all. So then Cenk says here, to clarify, it wasn't the property owner who hired the legal team that proved the extortion, etc. It was the lenders. You know, you got to make sure that you're giving out factual information here. That's an important distinction because the landlords don't seem trustworthy. Really? Landlords not trustworthy? These are also residents who clearly say they were driven out. All Latinos, by the way. Yeah, so we're not being racist by pointing out it's a Venezuelan gang because the people that the Venezuelan gang are targeting are Latinos. So we're not racist for pointing that out. It's just, you know, what is it? Venezuelan on Latino crime. And so Jeff here, he's actually been pushing back a lot on Anna and Cenk when it comes to this. And he says, interim Aurora Police Chief Heather Morris said gang members had not taken over and weren't collecting rent. And then Cenk is just like, oh, well, watch our show tonight and we'll show you proof. And there was more that I wanted to get to on this. There we go. So somebody just commenting, you know, you've lost your way. And what does Cenk do? Says, why are you pro-criminal gang terrorizing the working class? Just bang. Doesn't want to have a real conversation, doesn't want to push back, doesn't want to see the nuance. Just immediately, as soon as people question Cenk's take on it, you're pro-gangs terrorizing these working people. No, it's the landlords who are terrorizing the people in that building. And the thing is that there's not too many, concrete facts out there because there's just so much being thrown into the atmosphere. But really, why are they focusing on this story to begin with? What is it about this one story, this one potential outlier? Like, is there an epidemic of gangs of any sort across the country that are targeting apartment buildings and taking them over, literally like just taking them over and charging rent to the tenants and bypassing the landlords? Is this a widespread problem, or is this a cherry-picked story that they wanted to cover? So here's, Cenk just mentioning again, agree with online right-winger 2%, their reaction, welcome to the party, Megan welcomes you. Agree with online leftists, 98%, their reactions, Nazis. But again, that's actually why, a little bit, the percentage is off. But that is why people like Anna gets pulled a little bit more over to the right, over and over again. Because if you agree with the right wing on anything, they are very welcoming, especially if you're someone who is on the left, because they can use you as a proxy to legitimize a lot of their talking points. Again, the whole useful idiots that seems to be a trend on the right wing. The right wing is like, oh yeah, we'll embrace you as long as we can use you. And as a lot of people who have left the left, especially if they're, I don't know, let's say they're gay and married and use surrogates to have babies, Dave Rubin, they learn the hard way that the only reason why they were accepted was because they were being used. And yeah, people on the left, we have disagreements, but, it really depends on what those disagreements are about. And we have conversations, but with Cenk, it's not, that 2% disagreement we have and suddenly we're calling him a Nazi because, again, he accused Lance from the Serbs. Lance is the reason why everyone outside of Canada seems to think we're all maple syrup hockey playing, maple syrup chugging hockey player moose herders. Lance is the reason for that. He is just the most stereotypical Canadian out there and polite. And he gave some of the most milquetoast pushback out there. And Cenk immediately accused Lance of calling him a fascist, which never happened. It's like, prove it. Show the clip of Lance, sitting there calling Cenk a fascist. And so Cenk is very quick to say, oh, well, they're calling us Nazis and stuff. And yet you see how fast he will go to name calling other people who just say, yeah, I don't agree with you anymore. Oh, it's because you love gangs and you're pro-terrorist. And so somebody's just saying one more time in English, even 2% disagreement is not allowed with online leftists. Independent thinking is enormously frowned upon. But I want to be clear, they are a tiny, tiny fraction of the left wing in this country. The overwhelming majority of the actual left-wing voters agree with my positions. Some here, some there. And here is somebody rightfully pointing out, again, to that 2% comment, the reactionary and the 98%. And somebody basically saying, it's not the times you agree with them on, it's what you agree with them on. And that has a lot of weight to it. It has a lot of merit to it because, the main reason why I call out TYT the most is when it comes to trans issues and their language around their outrage over the term birthing person and stuff. Those are things that personally affect me. And I'm sorry, we can agree on 75% of the things. But if you don't believe I have the right to exist as an individual, that's a hard line for me. Okay? Yeah, there's no crossing that. You know, if you don't support equal rights for trans people, that's a hard line for me. And Cenk will say, oh, but we do. You know, we're the most supportive progressive network when it comes to trans issues. But no, because they're only partially. They're accepting of the human rights for trans folks that they like, that they're comfortable with, but they're not okay with actual just blanket human rights for trans people. Because Cenk will throw in all these caveats about sports or about, you know, therapies or children when it comes to being trans and all these sorts of things. And all of a sudden there's all these caveats. And it's like, no, you can't be partially for human rights and equal rights. And so I have hard lines when it comes to that. And so it could be things too, like when it comes to the issues that are happening in Gaza right now, we can agree with 90% of things. Okay, we can agree with 98, 99% of things. But if you are pro-genocide, that's a hard line for me. Okay? That is, there's no crossing that for me. And I will say that you need to shut up if that's what you're promoting. So in response to this person's comment, just saying it's not the times you agree with them on, it's what you agree with them on. And Cenk says, no, there is no issue where you're allowed to disagree with online leftists even a smidge without being called right-wing ultra mega sellout. Again, just launching those attacks on people. Just launching them like, no, we're talking about nuanced conversations. Like this here is a nuanced take from this person. And Cenk is just, no, I disagree with you. So left-wing people are calling me a mega sellout. And the thing is that if there are actually people now referring to Cenk and Anna as sellouts on the left, it takes a little bit more than a take for people on the left to start doing that, because we actually cut each other a fair bit of slack. Like the amount of slack cut to Cenk and Anna when that birthing person fiasco started was almost painful, how much slack was cut to them from other online leftists. But then right away, they accuse those online leftists of referring to them as fascists and stuff. And then this person saying, I think running with the PR cooked up by slumlords who charge $1,200 to $1,400 for a place with literal holes in the walls while dehumanizing asylum seekers warrants criticism. And that's what this is. We're criticizing their takes. The landlords didn't pay for the reports that proved the extortion. It was the lenders. The landlords are jerks for other reasons, and no one is defending them. The gangs are terrorizing other Venezuelan migrants, and you're cheerleading it. It's the migrants who need help. How is what you're doing, this coverage that you're doing, actually helping the migrants? Now, let's see. There's a new version of this post. Oh, I see. That's why it's kind of in gray. This is an older version, so let's click on that to see what the new version is. Okay, so, okay, it looks this, oh, what, wait, what's this? Is that Elon Musk responding to Cenk, saying 30% of the time it works, 98% of the time? About, you know, the mega embracing people who have right-wing takes? Surely this is a parody account. Oh, 196 million followers. Nope, that's actually Elon Musk's account. Replying to Cenk. If I start getting people like Elon Musk, Tim Pool and stuff replying to me favorably, retweeting my things, that's time for introspection right there. That's time to look. So I don't have it on my tweets that I'm going to focus on with Anna, but other people have noticed that some of those tweets have been retweeted by Tim Pool. And in the past, when it came to like the birthing person controversy, again, the amount of right-wingers that were talking favorably to Anna and retweeting her. When that happens, you need to look inward. If I start getting a whole bunch of right-wingers, praising my work, I've done something really wrong. Because I don't want to be on their side. I don't want to be in their good graces. Because I feel the vast majority of them are horrible people. A lot of right-wingers want people like me to not exist. They're okay with the genocide in Gaza. Okay? They are trying to ban trans people in the United States. I don't want to be friends with them. And so if a whole bunch of them just start suddenly, getting all cozy with me and supporting me, okay, I have done something severely wrong. Like something because really, my sarcasm can be bad at times, but then that would be a really big misstep right there. So here is Anna, getting in on all of this. And her tweet that started off some of these firestorms. So, Colorado law firm reports claims Venezuelan gangs has a stranglehold on apartments takeover began in 2023. CBS News Colorado also obtained internal Aurora police documents because, police, notoriously reliable sources of information, truthful to a fault, the police are, from June that appeared to support some of the law firm's conclusions. An officer reported responding to a call from a house cleaner at Whispering Pines. He said she told police she was threatened that she needed to give up the keys to vacant apartments at Whispering Pine apartment so that a group of Venezuelans can move people into the Whispering Pines apartment. The officer reported suspects left, but not before warning her to comply or else they would kill her or her family. The Aurora officer wrote to fellow officers, I would highly recommend you guys take 2 to 3 friends with you when responding to any calls out there. Now, I'm not ruling out the possibility that there is a gang terrorizing this apartment complex. Like, that's the thing. I don't rule it out, but I don't see the proof either. Like, you have one-off stories, and the people who like to get onto the local media are also people who are looking for fame. Media is not the same thing as it used to be once upon a time. And so, where are the actual sources? And she continues with saying, so I want to understand how the same police department is now denying that there are any issues with Venezuelan gangs in the area. What the fuck is going on here? Now, here's the thing. You're already getting contradictory information and you're wondering what the fuck is going on here, and yet you're reporting on it like you know exactly what's going on. And so what do you do? Like, where's the investigative journalism? Like, TYT is a big organization. If your priority is focusing on this story, send someone there. Do the investigative journalism. Don't rely on these reports from people with biases, from the police, the landlords, the media with their own biases. Send someone. It can't be more dangerous to send Dave Schuster there as it was to send Emma Vigeland when she was a young woman to Trump rallies. Send someone there to clear it up because you've already focused so much attention on this. Do the investigating part. Find out what the fuck is going on because, yeah, there could be people in danger in those apartment buildings, and I want to make sure that they're not in danger, because I do care about crime. I don't want crime to happen. But the thing is that when they accuse us of saying we're pro-crime because we push back on things, it's not because we're pro-crime. We're pro looking at the reasons, the systemic reasons that are causing that crime, and wanting to deal with those, as opposed to just saying, lock everyone up, crack down on them harder, send more people away to jail, tear apart more families, ruin more lives. We actually want to deal with the cause of the crime, the reason that it's happening. So Anna says a resident who managed to flee the building with the help of a city council member describes the terror she lived under and how Aurora Police Department wouldn't help her. And to be fair, the police department also notorious for not actually helping people. That is a thing. Like if crimes are committed, they don't necessarily, come to your rescue unless you're rich and it's a property crime. And so Jeff is pushing back, saying what is going on. Indeed, there's conflicting stories. And so how about instead of, so forcefully amplifying the story, you find out what's happening with it first. If you're going to make these salacious claims about Venezuelan gangs terrorizing this community, maybe find out actual facts first, as opposed to just reading a few headlines, listening to a few clips. Because here it says, tenants are troubled. Colorado apartment speaks out against Venezuelan gangs and stuff. So there are reports on it. There's conflicting, stories. And then Anna says, I think it's very likely the landlord is a piece of shit. But both things can be true. And these are working class people and migrants who can't afford to move. So if there is a gang problem, complaining about it could be risky and dangerous. And you know what? That is true. That is, if you're in an area where there's a lot of gang activity and a lot of criminal activity, going to the police could be dangerous. But going to the police could be dangerous because you're dealing with the police as well. And then here's somebody saying, I'm really sorry to see you switch teams. You'd be better off being Bill Maher's sidekick. So again, it's not just editorial choices. It's also, who does Anna, generally speaking, choose to reply to when it comes to these comments? Like when it came, again, to issues around trans people and the birthing comments, she would launch attacks on trans people. And she would cherry pick things. And Cenk does a lot of this too on who he replies to, where he will launch insults on a Twitter account that has, 100 followers because somebody had the gall to suggest that, why don't you talk to your nephew about this subject? And I've covered those exact exchanges. And so here's Anna saying, I've never provided cover for violent gang members. Sorry, you were under the impression I ever did. So back to her and Jeff's conversation, Twitter conversation on this. So Jeff says, maybe one thing led to another, a slumlord preying on poor, desperate people, some of whom turned to crime and gang activity. So again, this isn't being pro-criminal. This is Jeff being nuanced and saying we should be looking at the causes of what crime is. And he says, since cops don't really work for poor people, the whole situation gets ignored until the media picks it up. I don't know. And then Anna says, buildings that are neglected tend to be prime targets of criminals and violent gangs. I don't think the people living there were gang members. At least I haven't seen any evidence of that, but gangs likely noticed the poor conditions of the building, took advantage. Is that a problem in the States again? Are gangs just like roaming neighborhoods looking for apartment complexes to take over? Like, if this is a wider issue, are you not talking about that? Or why are you just, again, cherry picking this one outlier story? But Jeff says, fair enough, I could see that happening. I'm just wary of any narratives coming out of this for now. Again, that is a very reasonable take, with all this information that's just being blasted out there right now because this story is seeing its 15 minutes in fame. We're going to get a lot of contradictory information. We're going to get a lot of information from people who have agendas. And this is why when, in particular, a specific instance of a bombing or an attack within Gaza or something happens, I usually like to wait until the dust settles before you start saying things. Because, there's going to be a lot of information coming out. There's going to be a lot of contradicting stories. And to instantly latch on to the first thing you hear, it doesn't do you good and it doesn't serve your audience well. you want to get a full picture. And this is why I'm often late to a story, is because I want the full story. I want to know what's happening. And because I do this, because I have that principle, that means that when I do report on that story, it's not going to get the same clicks because it's no longer, the highlight. It's no longer being, it's past its moment. It's past its prime. And so Anna says, just to be clear, you're willing to believe that the landlord is at fault, but you are unwilling to believe that Venezuelan gangs are a problem in this area, despite investigations and testimonies from other residents that show it's true. Is it possible that you're allowing your bias to blind you to inconvenient realities? I know it's hard for leftists to accept this, but crime is a real thing. How did that comment warrant that response? He says, fair enough, I could see that happening. So he's already conceding that this could be a problem. That, yeah, a gang could be taking over this building. It could be a problem. And he's just saying, I'm wary of narratives coming out of this for now. And suddenly it's like, oh, no, you're just refusing to believe that this Venezuelan gang has taken over this apartment complex and is terrorizing these people. You're just refusing to believe that because you're pro-crime. Because people on the left, you refuse to accept crime as a real issue in this country. How does Jeff's comment warrant that response? And he says, actually, I agree with you that both could be true, but I'm reserving judgment because currently there are conflicting reports on this. And again, just showing some of the attitude that they have when it comes to the slightest bit of pushback. So we have here, breaking Kremlin agents in U.S. worth millions, Twitter followers, the story that we just talked about with Russia. And then somebody just replying to that saying, wonder why Anna Kasparian didn't speak on this. She has so much to say about the left nowadays. And then she says, I covered it on the show yesterday, doing a follow-up today. I'm not in a partisan cult. Truth matters and will prevail. Truth matters? Does it? Because you seem to be reluctant to accept anything other than your already preconceived notion of what happened. Because she's accusing other people of not accepting other viewpoints, but she's refusing to do it herself. And again, just showing how she's just launching off onto people. So she says here, direct quote from the city about the report that this commentator is lying about the information and claims. The letter underscored APD and other law enforcement agencies formed a special task force to investigate crime. So just talking about crime again. She's all about talking about crime. Because somebody's saying, local media is claiming the report by the law firm represents the landlord is fake. And somebody's saying there was literally a school shooting yesterday where kids died, and you decide to focus on the horrors of immigrants. This is why people are concerned about your new values. And again, this is actually a nuanced criticism. It is saying, like, why are you choosing to cherry pick this one story about Venezuelan gangs when here is another school shooting on like the first few days of school even starting? School shootings are a problem in the United States. That's a widespread across the country problem. And there are reasons for it and nuanced takes about it and lots of territory you can cover on that. And it affects so many more people. But this is her response to that person just saying, like, why are you choosing to cover this story over the shooting? What shooting? It didn't happen. It's a figment of your imagination. Why are you making it up? Whose team are you on? Shill, grifter, liar. That's what leftists sound like on Twitter when issues of public safety come up. And we're covering the shooting today. Very first story. You're welcome. You see, the thing is that it gets a lot more difficult for people on the left to want to try to reach out in good faith if this is the response that we're going to receive. They are showing zero willingness to have good faith conversations with people on the left. And it's getting worse with their attacks towards people who are just saying, can we have more nuance? Can I ask a question like, why are you covering this story and not another? Like, anyone on my show can ask me, like, why am I covering a specific story? And I have a reason. I can give you a reason. You know, I cover a lot of healthcare stories, stories about Doug Ford, about Pierre Poilievre, about Justin Trudeau, and I can give you, you know, very concrete personal reasons why I'm covering all of these stories. But to say, like, why are you covering this one outlier story with conflicting facts versus a school shooting where here's part of it. The shooter, who was a white boy, he was 14, was taken in alive by the police. You know, there's some content there that you can talk about, some nuanced takes and stuff, you know, the way that you can look at that, how there seems to be a trend of white shooters being taken in alive by the police versus a lot of black kids that have no guns, that kill no one, and yet are still killed by the police on a regular basis. But somehow this kid who shot and killed 4 people was taken in alive by the police. You know, you can talk about his ability to get the gun, the fact that it was so readily available, how his father is also being charged in this and should be for allowing access for his son to have this, how there's that mental health crisis in the United States, how this kid was on a watch list, like he was already talked to a year before this. So how was it that nothing happened in between then and now to maybe reach out to this kid, to get him the help that he needed to prevent this from happening? There's a lot that can go into that story. Versus the Venezuelan gangs are taking over an apartment complex. But the story about the shooting also reveals more of Anna's takes. And, you know, I saw this clip online and I'm thinking, okay, this clip, it is just a clip. It's taken out of context. But, you know, I watched the full video segment from TYT and, okay, her brain is fried. Like it has gone down that true crime rabbit hole like nobody's business. Like just white suburban housewife, you know, true crime fixation. Like what she says in this clip kind of blew my mind. So it starts at about the 13-minute mark into this. And you can see the clip here. FBI was warned about 14-year-old school shooting suspect a year ago. So if you want, go and watch the full clip. Get the full context for yourself. I'm starting at about 13 minutes into this because that's when her and Cenk get back and forth in it.
Okay, this will never happen in America, but I would say you're allowed to own a gun, but you have to have it locked in a locker that is not in your house, that is in a facility somewhere else, okay?
I disagree.
Yeah, I know,
I disagree, Cenk.
I know, okay.
Okay, but Cenk, okay, look, you and I have.
So they're allowed to disagree without calling each other fascists right off the bat, okay? Like, yeah, you can disagree, okay, that's fine.
I know, okay.
Okay, but Cenk, okay, look, you and I have a lot of these private conversations. So let me just ask you publicly, okay? As a Californian, as an Angelino, you know full well that right now there is a huge problem with what Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, has dubbed crime tourism, where people are literally coming here from other countries, okay? They're flying here on short-term visas. They're committing crimes, including invading people's homes to rob them as they are in their homes, okay? And what are people supposed to do if there are people coming in fully armed, ready to rob them, threatening their lives? They're not allowed to have a weapon to defend themselves in their own home. They have to have it locked away in a lockbox in some other location. That makes no sense.
No, and
okay, all of that made no sense right there. What the fuck? Okay, has the purge actually started to happen in the United States? Like, is that a real thing where you have crime tourists coming in to commit crime. Like, here's the funny thing. If you come in on an airplane and you go to somebody to rob all their stuff, you know what? There's like only a certain amount of luggage you can take back. You know, if you want to steal that TV and stuff, you have to somehow squeeze it into your suitcase. Like, you can't really just take it back. And they're coming in on visas? She actually said that? Let's backtrack just a bit here.
As an Angelino, you know full well that right now there is a huge problem with what Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, has dubbed crime tourism, where people are literally coming here from other countries. Okay, they're flying here on short-term visas.
So they're flying there on short-term visas, and they're going to go fly back home with all the goods they stole shoved into their suitcases. But they're coming in on short-term visas. Okay, how do you apply for that? How easy is it to get a short-term visa to get into the United States? Huh? Like, what do you put on your application? So, reason for the work visa. Oh, I have crime to commit in the United States. Yeah, I just want a short-term visa so that I can go in there and terrorize an apartment complex. Oh, but I'm not a landlord. I'm not terrorizing them in that way. I mean that I want to go and break into their homes while they're still there and steal all their stuff. And maybe I'll sell some, but maybe, I'll shove other things back in my suitcase to go back home. But yeah, so where on the application do I put that I want to be a criminal for my short-term visa application? Like, how easy is it to get that? Like, I'm not an immigrant expert here. I don't know the immigration system of the United States all that well. But I would imagine there's a fair bit of hoops you have to jump through in order to get a short-term visa. Okay? Like, you would have to do a lot, prove a lot. Prove like, okay, so what job are you going to the United States for? Because short-term visas are usually things for like you have a job, a temporary job. So can you prove who is going to be your employer? Where will you be staying? They'll check you out to make sure you're not at risk of overstaying your visa and things of that sort. Like, I'm pretty sure a fair bit has to go into it, but they're flying in. But I thought, Venezuelan immigrants and migrants, I thought they all kind of just crossed the border down in Mexico and walk in. So they're not the ones flying in. So you have people from around the world flying in to LA specifically into her area to commit crimes on short-term visas because the purge is happening there. And that's where you go for crime tourism. You go to the United States where, they have militarized police forces. That if you are brown and caught walking down the street in a way that the police don't like, there's a strong possibility you could be shot. But no, you just have these people on short-term visas flying in to her area to commit these brutal crimes. Are you fucking kidding me? How does your brain rot so much that you believe this? Is there a possibility of a crime spike in her area? Sure, why not? Vast majority of crime doesn't happen in neighborhoods she would be in. The vast majority of crimes happens in areas that are impoverished. Areas with the horrendous landlords that let their buildings, fall apart and things of that sort. And again, it's a societal issue. There's nuance. There's reasons why you have to deal with that. Crime is not a good thing. But in order to get rid of crime, you need to get to the root causes of them. And that's a societal issue. That's lack of employment, lack of health care, lack of mental health care, lack of affordability when it comes to living in places. Because, if people could easily move away from that building that's been terrorized by the Venezuelan gang, then there would be no problem. But they can't, because they can't afford rent anywhere else if they were to move out. You got to look at all the systemic issues that have led to that point. But to suddenly be like, no, there are people getting short-term visas flying into my area because you, Cenk, you live in the same California area as I do. So you know this, that they're flying in on short-term visas to rob you while you're in your home. Wow. That is a hot take. Mm-hmm. Oh, that is definitely a hot take there.
They're committing crimes, including invading people's homes to rob them as they are in their homes.
And just statistically speaking, when people go to rob a residence, they don't want the people home, especially in the United States. Why? Because a lot of people have guns in the United States. And if you knock on their door and they aren't expecting you and they shoot you through the door, the vast majority of times in the United States, they get away with it. You know, they're allowed to just shoot people through the door because, oh, they were a threat. They were on my property. It's stand your ground. And so of all the places that criminals can fly to go into people's homes while they're there to rob them, you know, I don't think the United States would be high on that list. Because you are gambling with your life if you do that. Back when I was working at Rebel HQ, I covered story after story of people who were accidentally shot by people who own guns. And this actually goes to Cenk's point on why guns shouldn't be on a residence, because when you have guns that are that easily accessible, they tend to get used on moments of hysteria, of moments of, you know, threat without thinking things through. You know, it's like, oh no, I feel threatened, I'm just going to shoot. As opposed to, you know, like here in Canada, you actually have a duty to retreat. You know, that first. You have, if somebody is breaking in your home, you have to try to first escape the situation before you're allowed to kill them. You know, it can happen where you're pinned down, and if you have a legal or illegal gun here in Canada, then, you know, use it to defend yourself. But, you know, you have that duty to retreat first. But in the United States, nothing like that exists. And so you have people breaking into homes while the people who live there are home with guns that are readily available and abundant in the United States. Really? That's a thing. That's a problem there. That's an epidemic of crime, massive crime waves of people breaking into homes while the owners are there, knowing damn well they can get shot. And if they are from Venezuela, then if the police show up, they're definitely getting shot.
Okay. And what are people supposed to do if there are people coming in fully armed, ready to rob them, threatening their lives? They're not allowed to have a weapon to defend themselves in their own home. They have to have it locked away in a lockbox in some other location. That makes no sense.
No, Anna, it doesn't make sense because we're already in an ocean of weapons. That's why my proposal I think is definitely the right one, but will never be implemented in America. So if we had implemented my proposal in the first place, we wouldn't be in an ocean of guns. So when you arrive from Venezuela, by the way, they're coming in through the airport, the criminal gangs wouldn't be like, here's a weapon, here's a weapon, here's a weapon. Everybody gets a weapon because there's like over 300 million guns in the country and nobody's doing anything about it. And if you arrested someone for having a weapon, the right wing takes your head off. So, like, it's not realistic at this point when there's already hundreds of millions of weapons out there. But let's keep going. Let's make it 400 million, 500 million. And you know what'll happen? More people will die and everybody will go, golly gee, what should we do about the mass shootings? And then the answer is super obvious. Ban the weapons that are doing it, but they won't. Instead, they'll have nonsense conversations about mental health as if America is the only place that has mental health issues and about too many doors and etc. And by the way, the dad should definitely be arrested. So you said that it was not unsupervised access. It turns out it was. You said it was only hunting rifles, and it turns out it was an AR weapon. So you were lying the whole time. And by the way, when I talk about gun culture, look guys, a lot of it is uncomfortable, and there's a lot of good people who participate in a normal part of so-called gun culture. And this guy says that he was a normal part of it. And I get it, and I know people who've done it, and I know that like it's an important part of your life, which is hunting, okay? I understand that. Having said that, he started teaching his kid, like I don't know, but I guess earlier than 13, to go how to handle weapons, shoot weapons, hunting, etc. Well, I know, I got kids. They're not mature enough to hold a weapon, shoot a weapon, and think that the answer to life's problems is shooting weapons. So that's part of the gun culture. And a lot of good people participate in that culture, and they'll be super mad at me, and they'll say, no way, that's no problem at all. But you're wrong. Teaching young kids how to shoot guns is a terrible idea.
So here was Cenk, he was going on and it's like, okay, these are reasonable takes when it comes to gun culture in the United States. And then suddenly it's a quick turnaround. It's like, but then there's these people who will disagree with me and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, part of the frustrating thing is when I do see a lot of clips from TYT these days, you know, you're watching it and it's like, oh, there's a reasonable take. But then suddenly Cenk will insert in something like, but the leftists will blow up at me if I suggest anything other than what they want and a full abolition of guns completely. Personally, I think all guns should be banned. I live in Canada, though. I get to say that. But I'm not going to yell and scream at somebody with Cenk's takes on what should happen with guns. Because I'm also realistic and I know, okay, you're not going to get rid of all guns in the United States. It's just not going to happen. And, you know, sometimes you have to take steps towards it. Those were reasonable takes. But immediately it's like, oh no, but if they don't agree with me, they're just going to attack me completely. I don't agree with him. I believe all guns should be taken away. I'm not going to attack him on that point, though.
Terrible. It's not at all surprising that a certain percentage of them to go, hey dad, good idea. Instead of using it for deer, why don't I use it to murder the kids that are annoying me in school? You know why? Because they're 13 and 14 and some of them have mental health problems. Giving them weapons is dumb.
Well, there's now precedent with one of the past school shooters, not only.
So we don't need to get to the rest of that. But again, part of the reason why I'm focusing on this is, you know, their YouTube channel has over 6 million subscribers. They have their own network. They have other channels that have millions of subscribers. They have like the biggest reach, and they sell themselves as the progressive online left. They're not. They're not anymore. I don't know if they ever were, but they're definitely not now. And spewing this type of rhetoric, you know, again, it legitimizes other people's fears. When Anna goes on a rant like that saying, oh no, there's definitely crime happening here. They're breaking into the homes on the short-term visas. Then that legitimizes the right-wing talking points about how out of control crime is, despite the fact the statistics show otherwise. You know, you're going off of personal biases, off of experiences, anecdotes that you might have in your own life. And you're using that to paint a picture of what's happening across the country when it's not the case. You have to look at the actual statistics. And she's refusing to do that. And instead, she's just latching on to these ideas of these sensationalized, crime-ridden hellholes that they're living in right now. And using that to get clicks, to get attention, and to get right-wingers to like her even more, to encourage her. It's like that positive, but it's a very negative feedback loop where she says something that's a little right-wing, and right-wingers compliment her and tell her that she's so brave and that she says that and it's so great of her. And then suddenly they stop doing it because she hasn't gone further. So then suddenly she goes a little bit further. And then the right again is like, oh, you're so brave. You're amazing for doing this. But then they stop again, and she's no longer getting that positive reinforcement. Well, maybe she could have in their left-wing take, but the instant she has in their left-wing take, people on the left question her. You know, like maybe, I don't know, have you looked into this? Here's the nuance. Why are you choosing this story? And, oh, that doesn't feel as good, but, oh, now I have this right-wing take, and here's all these right-wingers now patting me on the back and giving me all this positive attention and feedback. So, okay, actually, when you look at it this way, then maybe I can go a little bit further here on the right, because this still seems reasonable to me now. And then she stops, and the right wing stops praising her. And suddenly, well, I have this left wing take on this, and then the left push back. Again, she's not getting that positive affirmation there. And so slowly and slowly, this pendulum that she's on swings further and further to the right. And I will be making a video essay about this that goes into depth as to how this happens. But it is important, even though I don't want my channel to be about TYT, it is important to cover this because of the significance of what TYT is, what they represent, the message they send out, and how that affects people watching. How that makes people complicit in certain right-wing talking points, how it legitimizes certain right-wing talking points, and how this has real-world harm to a lot of people. Because, right-wingers can spew a lot of these things, but people on the left will dismiss it because it's coming from the right, and we know they're coming from a dishonest perspective. We know that they're grifting. We know that they're just trying to harm and stuff like that. But if you hear it from somebody that you look up to, that you admire, that you trust, somebody on the left, well, then maybe it's a little bit more reasonable. And maybe, maybe those trans activists are demanding too much, wanting to be on sports. Maybe crime is that bad. Maybe we all should have guns. And then you get Elon Musk saying, yeah, I think you're right on this. I think you're right. And that's the thing. You are right. You're getting more right as you go. So, yeah. Nuance, looking into things. Don't be afraid to actually accept criticism. Don't be afraid to be wrong. And when you are wrong, own it. Acknowledge it. Admit it. Don't dig your feet deeper into the sand. You're human. It's okay. We all fuck up from time to time. And I hope that when that happens, when I fuck up, that, people will give me that benefit of a doubt, because you watch my content, you watch my regular content, and I'm coming from a place, a good-natured place. I'm coming from a place of wanting to do right. And if I mess up on that, I want to know. And I want to be a better person, because I want the people in my community, the people around me, the people of this country to have better lives. And that's why I cover the stories I cover. It's not for clicks. It's because I'm doing what I can when I can, and I want to make the best possible change that I can within my resources. So this is not going to be a TYT Smack Talk channel, but please, for people who are watching this segment, who believe that, I would really appreciate you watching my other stuff too, because even if you're American, what's happening here to our healthcare, what's happening in our politics resonates so much with what's happening in the United States. It's all connected. And in order for us to fight this right-wing tide, we need solidarity on both sides of the border, on the left. Because the right wing has definitely done a good job of that. We need to do it on this side as well.